August 14th, 2023. The air in the co-op hall was thick. Thick with the smell of cheap coffee. Thick with the sweat of a long harvest. Thick with anticipation. It was the night of the Henderson County Yield Awards. 100 farmers sat on folding metal chairs. Their faces were maps of sun and worry. Tom Albright, the co-op manager, stood at the podium. He adjusted the microphone. A squeal of feedback cut the room. He cleared his throat, and he began to read from a sheet of paper. "For soybeans," he said, his voice echoing slightly. "Third place, 88.4 bushels per acre, Mark Peterson." Polite applause. A nod from a man in the back. "Second place, 91.2 bushels per acre, Dale Schmidt." More applause. Stronger this time. Dale was a big operator. Everyone expected him to be near the top. Tom paused. He looked down at the paper again. He seemed to reread the next line. Just for a second. A flicker of something. Confusion. Maybe surprise. The room was silent, waiting. "And first place," Tom said, his voice now very clear. "First place for soybeans, with a verified yield of 96.7 bushels per acre." Another pause. It was a number that didn't make sense. Not for this year. Not with the dry June they'd had. Sarah Jenkins. The name hung in the air. The applause was scattered at first. Then it grew. A low rumble of respect. But in the front row, a man named Frank Miller did not clap. He just sat there, staring at the stage. He ran the service department at the AgriCorp dealership. He was the one who had told her it was impossible. He was the one who, just 6 months earlier, had looked her in the eye and told her the planter was dead. This channel tells the stories of people who were told no. People who were told it couldn't be done. People who were told the box was locked. And then they went out to the workshop, and they built their own key. If you believe those stories need to be told, subscribe to this channel, because what happened in that workshop changes everything. Let me tell you about Sarah Jenkins. It started in February. The air had the kind of cold that felt personal. The ground was frozen solid. The sky was the color of lead. A perfect day for working on equipment. Sarah backed her pickup truck to the service bay doors. The AgriCorp dealership was a cathedral of green and yellow steel. Gleaming new combines sat like patient dinosaurs. Their price tags had 7 figures, and a lot of zeros. Sarah wasn't there for something new. She was there for something old. In the truck bed, carefully wrapped in a horse blanket, was the brain. The control unit for her 24-row planter. A 2018 model 1775 NT. A good machine. Her father had bought it. Cash. 2 years before he passed. He always said, "Debt is a leash," and he planned to die a free man. He did. The farm was hers now. All 1,200 acres, free and clear. But freedom had its own price. The price of keeping things running. She carried the unit inside. The service department smelled of grease and ozone. Frank Miller came out from the back. He wiped his hands on a red rag. Frank was a good man. Everyone in the county said so. Coached Little League for 20 years. Served on the church council. He had a kind face, wrinkled from smiling. He'd known Sarah since she was a girl. He'd known her father his whole life. He smiled when he saw her, a real smile. "Sarah, how are you? Good to see you, Frank." She set the control unit on the counter. It looked small in the big room. "I need the preseason diagnostic, Frank. Just want to make sure she's ready to talk to the GPS. Make sure the row clutches are firing right." "Of course," he said. "Leave it with me. I'll have it for you by the end of the day." She thanked him. She went home. She trusted Frank. Her father had trusted Frank. That was the problem. Trust can blind you to the contract. The phone rang at 4 o'clock. It was Frank. His voice was different. It had a careful, practiced tone. The sound of someone about to deliver bad news they believe is for your own good. "Sarah, can you come down to the shop? There's something we need to talk about." She drove back. The winter sun was already low, casting long blue shadows across the snow. The control unit was on the bench, hooked up to a laptop with a dozen cables. Frank stood beside it like a doctor next to a hospital bed. He didn't smile this time. He just nodded. "So, what's the verdict, Frank?" He took a deep breath. "Well, Sarah, the hardware is fine. Mechanically, it's perfect. Your dad took great care of this machine." She waited. She knew there was a but coming. The but is always the most expensive word in the English language. "But the software is no longer supported." He said the words gently, like he was trying to soften a blow. "What do you mean, not supported? It worked fine last fall." "I know it did," he said. "But AgriCorp has moved to a new platform, Precision Suite 4.0, for security and data integration reasons. The old software, the version you're running, has been sunsetted. It won't receive the handshake signal from the new GPS network." He pointed to a red error message on his laptop screen. "Authentication failed." Sarah stared at the words, "the new case of the deal device on the new government." Sarah find it for this known of his words when mentioned a data in must of individual. "So I just need to download a patch? An update?" Frank shook his head slowly. "No, it's not a patch. It's a full system replacement. A new license, a new activation key. We have to install the 4.0 suite." "Okay," she said. "How much is that?" Frank looked at the floor for a moment. Then he met her eyes. He was a good man. He didn't want to say the number. "The list price for the license and installation is $6,250. Silence. The only sound was the hum of the overhead heaters. $6,000? To make a machine I already own? Work? "I understand, Sarah. I do. But it's not my decision. It's a network security issue. They can't have old, vulnerable software running on the network. It's a risk." "A risk to who, Frank?" "A risk to everyone," he said. "It protects your data. It protects you from liability. It ensures you get the best performance." He was saying all the right things. The things the manual told him to say. He believed them. That was the worst part. He genuinely believed he was helping her, protecting her from herself. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? Not by an enemy, not by a rival, but by a friend, by someone who smiled while they said it, someone who insisted it was for your own good. They weren't being cruel. They were being certain of your limits, certain of what you were capable of, certain of the rules. Drop a comment and tell me about that moment. Because the certainty of a good man is a wall higher than any fence. Sarah looked at the control unit. Then she looked at Frank. "So if I don't pay $6,000, what happens?" Frank's kind face filled with a kind of gentle pity. "Then the planter is a brick, Sarah. It won't move. The clutches won't engage. The seed meters won't turn. It's dead." He said the word with finality. Dead. She stood there in the quiet service bay, surrounded by millions of dollars of new equipment, every piece of it running on a subscription, every piece of it leased, not owned. She thought of her father. She thought of his words. Debt is a leash. This wasn't debt. It was something else, something newer, and in some ways, worse. It was a digital leash. She didn't say anything for a long time. Frank waited patiently. He thought she was calculating, figuring out how to pay for it. He thought she was accepting the new rules. He was wrong. She was remembering the old ones. "All right, Frank," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it was not the voice of defeat. "Unplug it. I'm taking it home." Frank looked surprised. "Sarah, planting is only 8 weeks away. You don't have time to—" "To what, Frank?" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. He thought she was making a mistake, a costly, emotional mistake. "I'm not going to be the man who lets you miss your planting window," he said. "I'll see if I can get you a discount, maybe get it down to 5,000. I'll call the regional manager." "Don't bother," she said. She picked up the heavy control unit. It felt cold in her hands. "Thanks for your time, Frank." She walked out of the dealership, past the new combines, past the smiling salesman. She didn't look back. Frank watched her go. He shook his head slowly. He felt something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't anger, not contempt. It was a deep, paternal sadness. He genuinely believed she was about to destroy her father's legacy, because she was too stubborn to pay the toll. He went back inside. He made a note in her file. Customer refused mandatory upgrade. Planter non-operational. Follow-up in March. He was certain she would call back. He was certain she would give in. Certainty is a quiet poison. Sarah drove home. The setting sun was a slash of orange in her rearview mirror. She didn't go to the house. She went to the workshop, her father's sanctuary. It smelled of welding rods and motor oil and sawdust, a smell like home. She put the control unit on the workbench. It sat there under the bare fluorescent bulb, a black box, a brick, dead. She pulled up a stool, and she just sat, looking at it, for an hour, maybe 2. The anger came first, a hot, useless rage, at Agricorp, at the relentless march of subscriptions, at a world where you couldn't just own a thing anymore. Then the fear came, a cold knot in her stomach. Frank was right. Planting was 8 weeks away, 1,200 acres, corn and soybeans. The entire year's income depended on getting the seed in the ground, on time, and at the right depth, and at the right population. Her planter was the most important piece of equipment she owned, and it was dead. The fear was followed by despair, a heavy blanket of it. Maybe she should just pay it, put it on the credit card, swallow her pride. It was the cost of doing business after all. That's what her neighbors would say. That's what a smart business person would do. Her eyes drifted around the workshop. Tools hung on the walls in perfect order. Wrenches and sockets, grinders and drills. Her father's tools. He had a place for everything, and a belief that everything could be fixed. He never bought a new thing if the old thing could be repaired. He called it respecting the steel. Her gaze fell on a corner of the shop, on a dusty metal shelf. Next to a stack of old service manuals sat a laptop. It was a Panasonic Toughbook CF29, ancient, from the early 2000s. It was built like a tank, thick magnesium alloy case, a handle built right into it. It was the first computer her father had ever bought. He used it for diagnostics, before the dealerships locked everyone out, before you needed their permission to read the codes from your own machine. On the lid was a worn sticker, a skull and crossbones, but the bones were wrenches. Underneath it, a motto: if you can't open it, you don't own it. And then she remembered his voice, clear as if he were standing next to her. They sell you the box, Sarah. They don't sell you the key. You have to make the key. She stood up. The anger was gone. The fear was gone. The despair was gone. They were replaced by something else, something quiet, something cold, and something very, very clear. resolve. She walked over to the shelf. She picked up the old tough book. It was heavy, solid, real. She brought it to the workbench. She set it down next to the dead control unit, the old world next to the new one. She found the power cord. She plugged it in, and she pressed the power button. The screen flickered to life, a low-res, pixelated blue. Windows XP, a ghost from another time. But it worked. The battery was dead, but the machine was not. She spent the rest of the night not fixing the planter, but learning about the problem. She learned that her planter ran on a system called a CAN bus, a controller area network, a simple, robust language that allowed all the different parts of the machine to talk to each other. The GPS, the seed meters, the hydraulic motors, the row clutches. Agricorp hadn't changed that language. They had just put a new lock on the door, a digital one, the handshake. Her control unit was programmed to look for a specific, encrypted signal from the GPS receiver, a signal that was updated every season. If it didn't get the 2023 signal, it would not operate. It was a prisoner in its own steel body. The $6,000 update wasn't for a better machine. It was the ransom. This is where the story becomes bigger than one woman and one machine. Because Sarah discovered she wasn't alone. She found forums online, hidden corners of the internet, filled with farmers from Poland, from Ukraine, from Brazil. Farmers who couldn't afford the ransoms, farmers who had been making their own keys for years. They shared code, they shared wiring diagrams, they shared knowledge, freely. It was a digital Grange Hall, a community of the locked out. They didn't see it as hacking, they saw it as farming, as fixing what was broken, as owning what they had paid for. Sarah stayed up all night, reading, learning, a dictionary of new terms. Firmware, hex code, emulators, JTAG ports. By sunrise, she had a plan. It was a crazy plan. It was a long shot. It had 100 ways to fail, and only one way to succeed. She was going to perform a jailbreak on a 24-row corn planter. The next morning, she didn't call Frank. She called a retired tractor mechanic named Gus. Gus lived 3 miles down the road. He had worked for the dealership for 40 years. Before it became Agricorp, back when it was just Henderson Farm Implement. He knew machines from the inside out. "Gus," she said, "I need to get inside this control unit, and I don't want to break it." He was at her workshop in an hour. He looked at the black box. He looked at the old tough book. He looked at Sarah. He saw the look in her eyes, the same look her father used to get. He didn't ask what she was doing. He didn't ask why. He just nodded. "Let's open her up," he said. For the next 2 weeks, they worked. Gus meticulously disassembled the unit. Sarah labeled every component, every circuit board, every ribbon cable. Inside, it wasn't magic. It was just electronics. Processors made by companies anyone could buy from, memory chips, capacitors. The box wasn't the value. The code was. The lock. Using the schematics she found online, she located the main processor. She had to solder a tiny wire to a specific pin, a delicate, nerve-wracking operation. This wire would be her entry point, her way past the digital gatekeeper. She connected it to a special adapter she ordered from a man in Estonia. It cost $37, shipping included. Then she plugged the adapter into the serial port of the old tough book. She took a deep breath, and for the first time, she had direct access to the planter's mind. She wasn't using the friendly Agricorp interface. She was in the guts of the machine, looking at lines of raw code. It was like trying to read a foreign language in the dark. She spent days just mapping the system, identifying the part of the code that looked for the GPS handshake, the kill switch. The forums had warned her, "Don't delete it. You'll brick the whole system." You have to fool it. You have to make it think it got the signal it was looking for. She had to write a small piece of code, an emulator, a piece of code that would pretend to be the 2023 GPS signal. It would live inside the planter's brain, and every time the system booted up, it would whisper to the kill switch, "It's okay. The handshake is good. Go to work." She typed. She made mistakes. She compiled the code. It failed. She tried again and again. For a month, her workshop was the only place she went. Her neighbors started to talk. They saw the lights on at all hours. They saw Gus's truck parked outside. Dale Schmidt, who farmed the section next to hers, stopped by one afternoon. He was a good farmer, successful. He ran all the newest equipment, leased, of course. "Sarah, what in the world are you doing in here?" "Fixing my planter," she said. Dale shook his head. "I heard what happened at the dealership. Just pay the money, Sarah. It's a write-off. It's the cost of doing business. You're going to mess around with that thing and fry the whole system. Then you'll have nothing." He meant well. He was giving her good, practical advice. The advice of a man who accepted the rules. He was certain. A few days later, another neighbor stopped by. Old man Hemmings. He was in his 80s, farmed with mules as a boy. He didn't say much. He just brought her a thermos of coffee and a bag of his wife's molasses cookies. He looked at the mess of wires and circuit boards. He looked at the screen full of code. He looked at her tired eyes. "Your daddy would be proud," he said. He never liked a closed box. That was all. Then he left. The community was split between the ones who paid the toll and the ones who remembered a time when there wasn't one. Finally, in late March, she had it. A small file, only 512 kilobytes. Her key. She uploaded it to the planter's controller. A slow, tense process. The progress bar on the old Tough book crept across the screen. 1%, 10%, 50. When it hit 100, the screen flashed. Upload complete. She held her breath. Now came the moment of truth. Gus helped her put the control unit back together. Every screw, every seal. Perfect. They installed it back in the planter. They hooked up the battery. She climbed into the tractor cab. Her heart was pounding. This was it. Either it worked, or she had a $200,000 piece of scrap metal. A 1,200-acre field of failure. She turned the key in the tractor. The engine roared to life. She powered on the planter's monitor. The Agricourt logo appeared, just like normal. The system booted up. Loading. Initializing. Connecting to GPS. This was the moment. The moment the handshake would be requested. The moment the kill switch would either stand down or shut everything off. A message flashed on the screen. GPS signal acquired. System ready. Green lights. All green. Sarah started to cry. Quietly. In the empty cab of her tractor. In the cold March air. Gus stood outside. He saw the green lights through the window. He just smiled and tipped his cap. Planting season arrived. April 15th. She started in field 7. Corn. She lowered the planter, engaged the drives, and she drove. The machine worked. It worked perfectly. The seed spacing was flawless. 99.7% singulation. The depth was consistent. 2 inches. Every seed. The row clutches fired instantly at the end rows. Saving seed. Saving money. It was more than working. It was beautiful. A perfect, precise dance of steel and silicon and soil. And she was the conductor. Not a subscriber, not a lessee. The owner, the operator, the one who had made the key. She planted her corn. Then she planted her beans. 1,200 acres. in 10 days. Not once did the system fail. Not once did an error message appear. Her cost for the fix? $37 for the adapter, a case of beer for Gus, and a month of her life. Her neighbor's cost? $6,250, plus tax. That was the contrast math, the quiet arithmetic of self-sufficiency. Frank Miller drove past her farm one afternoon. He was on his way to a service call. He saw her out in the field. The big tractor, the 24-row planter moving steadily across the black dirt. He slowed his truck. He stopped. He just watched. It didn't make sense. He knew she hadn't come back to the dealership. He would have known. Had she bought a new planter? No. That was her father's 1775 NT. He was sure of it. He pulled out his phone. He called her. She answered from the tractor cab, the sound of the engine in the background. "Sarah, it's Frank Miller. I'm driving by. I see you're planting." "Yes, Frank. Season's not going to wait." "What are you running?" he asked. His voice was tight with confusion. "Did you get the update somewhere else?" There was a pause. She could have gloated. She could have been angry. She could have listed all the nights she spent in the workshop. But she didn't. Her answer was quiet and devastating in its simplicity. "No, Frank. I'm running last year's software. It works just fine." Frank didn't know what to say. He felt something shift in his world, a foundation cracking. For 30 years, he had been the expert, the one with the tools, the one with the knowledge, the gatekeeper. A kind gatekeeper, a helpful one, but a gatekeeper nonetheless. And a woman in a workshop, with a 20-year-old laptop, had just walked right through the gate without ever asking his permission. He mumbled something about being glad it worked out, and he hung up. He drove away. But for the rest of the spring, he thought about that conversation. He thought about the certainty in his own voice. That day in the service bay. "The planter is dead," he had told her. He had been so sure. He had been so wrong. The summer was long and hot. June was dry. July brought rain. The crops grew. Sarah's fields looked good. As good as anyone's. Better, some whispered. There was a deep, healthy green to her corn. Her soybeans were thick, potting up nicely. Harvest came in August, a whirlwind of dust and diesel. The combine rolled. The yield monitor in the cab told the story. The numbers were high, higher than she had ever seen. The corn was averaging over 280 bushels per acre. The beans were in the 90s. She knew it was good. She decided to enter the county yield contest, just to see. Just to have a verified number. A piece of paper. A fact that could not be argued with. Which brings us back to the co-op hall. Back to the folding chairs and the cheap coffee. Tom Albright had just read her name. First place. 96.7 bushels per acre. A new county record. Sarah walked to the stage. She shook Tom's hand. She accepted the small plaque. She didn't give a speech. She just said thank you and walked back to her seat. The applause was real now. Respect, admiration, and for some, a little bit of fear. The fear of a world being turned upside down. After the ceremony, as people were leaving, Frank Miller approached her. He looked older than he had in February. His certainty was gone, replaced by a quiet humility. He stood before her, not as the expert, but as a man trying to understand. "Congratulations, Sarah. That's one hell of a yield." "Thank you, Frank." He shook his head. "I don't know how you did it. I really don't. I was so sure." He trailed off. Sarah looked at him. No anger, no triumph. Just a simple, quiet truth. You told me the planter was dead, Frank. You just forgot to tell the planter. He nodded slowly. He understood. He had diagnosed the software, but he had misdiagnosed the farmer. That was the beginning of the legacy. It didn't end with a plaque on a wall. The story spread, first through the county, then through the state. Other farmers started calling her, tentatively at first. I have a 2019 combine. My sprayer is a 2020 model. The dealer told me. They all had the same story, a story of a locked box and a costly key. Sarah didn't sell them a solution. She did something more radical. She taught them. She invited them to her workshop on winter weekends. They would bring their control units. She would show them how to open the box, how to read the code, how to make their own key. She started a small online group, just a private forum for her neighbors. She called it the Independent Implementers. Within a year, it had 500 members. The year after that, 5,000, from all over the world. It became a library, a repository of knowledge, a digital defense against digital leashes. Young farmers, kids just starting out, came to her, burdened with debt for new equipment, terrified of the subscription costs. She mentored them. She showed them how to buy older, reliable machines and how to keep them running without asking for permission. Agricorp heard about it, of course. Their lawyers sent a letter, a cease and desist, citing copyright infringement and violation of user agreements. Sarah posted the letter on the forum. The next day, a legal defense fund was started by the farmers themselves. They raised $50,000 in a week. A law professor from the state university took the case pro bono. He argued it wasn't about copyright. It was about the right to repair, the right to own property. The case became a landmark. It led to new legislation in 3 states, protecting farmers and their right to fix their own equipment. All because one woman, in one workshop, refused to believe that her machine was dead. She wasn't just growing corn anymore. She was growing freedom. Today, if you go to Sarah's farm, the workshop is bigger. There are more tools, more projects, more young farmers learning. And on a shelf, in a place of honor, sits an old Panasonic Toughbook. Its screen is dark. Its battery is long dead. But it is not a relic. It is an artifact, a symbol. Last winter, a young woman was in the shop, a high school girl from the local FFA chapter. She was learning to diagnose a hydraulic controller. She pointed to the old laptop. "What's that one for?" she asked. Sarah walked over. She ran her hand over the dusty magnesium case, over the worn sticker with the crossed wrenches. She smiled. "That one? That's the key." Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is being told no. They are being told a box is closed, that the software is sunsetted, that the key costs $6,000. And they are being told this by a good person, a kind person, someone who genuinely believes it is for their own protection. Because the most dangerous limitation is the one you accept, the one imposed by someone who thinks they know your limits better than you do. They are wrong. The box can always be opened. You just have to be willing to make your own key. If this story reminded you of someone who needs to hear that, someone who is facing their own locked box, share it with them. And if you believe that the right to own what you buy is a story worth fighting for, subscribe to this channel, because there are a million more keys waiting to be made.